Hey, welcome back to another edition of the Seats to Streets podcast. I am your host, J.R. Horn. That guy over there is Brian Gorman, and we are so glad that you are here with us as we endeavor to equip churches with the tools they need to move their people from Sunday morning seats to local and global streets. And we're so excited as we continue our conversation on culture today. We are glad you're here. Brian, how are you today, buddy boy?
Hey, I think I'm doing good.
Think so?
That someone asked me that question a few weeks ago, and I've been kind of processing a lot of things lately. And they asked us, "Hey, how you doing?" And I went, like, wait, that question should be easier to answer than it is. And but it's one of those seasons where I've just got everything in a little bit of turmoil, but all turmoil that I created, which is good. It's good turmoil. It's not bad turmoil. And so I'm like, I'm still kind of sitting here in the midst of even a moving computer stuff. I'm kind of sitting here in the midst of my own mess going, how am I doing? I think I'm good.
I'm grounded again.
Yeah. I just had some triple dipped dark chocolate espresso beans. So I think that makes me good. I'm in a happy place.
That is so good.
Right now.
I had a professor one time. I had a psychology professor one time. It's in college. Kind of rail against this idea of asking someone in passing, "Hey, how are you?" as just a salutation, instead of being a legitimate inquiry into their life, into their emotional health, their psychological health, spiritual health. And he said, in class, we were warned. He said, "Hey, I just want you all to know that if you ask me that in passing, I'm going to turn around and talk to you." Of course, everybody in class was like, "Okay, let's not ask him how he's doing. Let's just say hi and just walk on," right?
Right.
Not me. I forgot. Walking late for class, kind of zooming past on a sidewalk, and "Hey, Dr. So-and-so, how are you?" And just kind of went, and I went, one of those moments you're like, sure enough, I turned around, and he was turning around too to talk to me. And I went, well, at least I got an excuse as to why I'm late. Dr. So-and-so kept me talking. So,
yes, we're here. Big thing I do a lot of times with people is I will just say on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being, and then I kind of fill in the blank with whatever I feel like. 1 being, hey, if you don't mind just throwing a little dirt on top of me, I'd appreciate it. And 5 being, if I was any better, there'd be 2 of me, right? On a scale of 1 to 5, where are you at today? Sometimes 1 to 10, depending upon the person. But I'll usually ask a question like that if I really actually want to know,
right?
Because I find it slows them down enough to go, how do you answer that? And then gets them to respond to me. So that's pretty common, especially if I haven't talked to somebody for a few days and I'm just like texting with them. That'll be something I'll do quite often in text conversations, just like, where are we at? And I just find it helps. It opens up a whole new set of actual dialogue between people. So
on a scale of
stupid information for the day.
On a scale of 1 to dead, how are you today? Well, I got 1 foot in the grave and the other one's slightly dirty. So not quite there yet, but knocking on the door. Hey, you see this?
Slip and slide, baby.
You see this?
It
is flannel weather in Kentucky, baby. It is 54 degrees, and I have yet to turn on my heat. I've been told by the family. I said, nope, we're going to make it. We got to make it. November's almost here. We got to at least make it to November. It's chilly
awesome
here.
Like that here too.
It is chilly here.
That's funny. You're like, it's chilly. I'm like 54 degrees. That sounds amazing.
I know. But, and we're used to 90s with a heat index of 105 and stupid humidity of like 77 and
Now,
dying.
last week was the first time. There was one day last week I got up and I go to the gym. I wake up about 4:45. I'm heading to the gym around 5, and I got done with about an hour's worth of workout, and I walk outside, and it's kind of that sideways rain, and it's only like 54 degrees, which isn't for us is pretty nice weather. But sideways rain with wind, and it's cold rain.
When you always have wind,
I'm like, oh, I should have had a jacket. It's the first time I felt that. The rest of the time, like I bring the jacket and then I just put it in the passenger seat because I don't ever want to put it on. But yeah, my parents were up here a few weeks ago to watch a football game my son was playing in, and my dad like brought a sweatshirt, but it was 54 degrees, but our 54 and your 54 are not the same thing.
Right.
And so I went and got him a canvas jacket that I've got, and I gave that to him. And he's just, this is so nice, man. Man, thanks for letting me borrow it. I'm like, you can actually have it. He's like, well, why? I'm like, I think I have like 3 more of that same level. And he's like, you have 3 more of these jackets? I'm like, no, you need like for every 10 degrees, you need a different level of coat.
Right.
And so like I've got lots of them in that really, really cold bracket.
So I just had to look up. There's a reason you said, the difference between year 54 and hour 54. It is literally 54 degrees right now, but 90% humidity. That means when you walk outside and all that water droplets that attach to you, it's 54 degrees. That's why it's so stinking cold. Before we actually get into winter and the humidity drops, I mean, that's why it just feels so cold. But I love how you just low key middle aged guy dropped what time you wake up and what time you go to the gym. That's awesome. It's like only us guys do that, and I'm getting there. See, look at this.
All right. Yeah, no, it's funny. We're also breaking one of my number 1 rules. If you're a service host in our church, right, you're going to stand up and you're going to speak at the beginning and say how you do it. Like one of our rules is do not talk about the weather. Please,
I know, right?
Please don't talk about the weather, and don't talk about the Packers or the Bears football, right? Because if you're not watching it today, it doesn't. And we have people who watch our stuff from all over the country. I'm like, don't. So it's funny. We're breaking one of my totally primary rules for service hosts.
However, you might be able to go back on that Packers and Bears conversation because Chicago's broke anyway. They're probably going to become the Nantucket Bears here pretty soon. Whoever buys them. So can you imagine? Can you imagine the Bozeman, Montana Bears? I mean, that'd be awesome.
Kentucky needs something professional down there.
Hey, we've got a top 12 NCAA football team right now, baby. Maybe not when this video comes out, but currently, right now, we are top 12 in the NCAA. I don't know.
And to be fair,
when did the last time that happened?
University of Kentucky Wildcats are paid more than a lot of NBA teams. So, I mean, I think it's as professional as you're going to get. They could beat a handful of NBA teams, I think. So
this is why we keep Louisville so close to us. We just keep holding the birdie over here. Look at them; they're really bad. They do things that are really bad. Look at them. They cheated again. They cheated again.
Yeah,
man. Yeah. They still have not dropped the hammer on Rick Pitino and now the current Louisville Cards basketball coach because they keep finding dirt. It's literally that bad.
I've known some churches like that. Hey, let's do something productive. Where are we at? It's like we've been here for a few minutes. What are we up to?
We could be talking about Kentucky stuff, man. I'm going to be off track so much. But last week we talked about what it is to build a list of cultural language. We know that language is a part of our culture now. It's just that some of the behaviors, the language, and the other things that you do that make up your culture. And a big part of that list is the language that you use. We have to take time to actually work on the language. Think about it. You're at your house. There are certain phrases or certain words that are not allowed to be used at your house because it goes against the culture of your family. Right? Like I don't like the word hate. Like I just don't like the word hate, even though it's used in scripture. I just don't like using the word hate. Like what's the old TV show where he's like, I hat my mom. Everybody loves Raymond. He was not allowed to use the word hate. So he did Pig Latin. I hat my mom. Oh, it was hilarious. But anyway, I don't like those phrases. And in order to be able to build a positive kingdom building, advancing culture, we have to take the time to get specific words and phrases right.
Yeah. No, you're right. Language is so key. My brother coaches a junior high, or one of the coaches for junior high football team. And when his son was younger, elementary, like 2nd grade, 3rd grade, he would come to practices, and one day his son comes walking over to him real sheepishly, like, and said, Dad, the guys over there were using the S word.
Oh.
And at this point, my brother's like, well, we're gonna have some words. You're talking like that in front of my boy, right? Kind of thing. And he goes walking over, and they were saying how something was stupid. He's like, right, but that was the S word at that time, right?
I'm gonna head back. So
the world keeps changing, right? And I think that's why this language is so important. If you can begin to get the right language into the culture of your church, you'll begin to get so many other things. So if you didn't listen to the last one, you got to listen to the last one to help you understand the difference between systematic and systemic. But today, one of the things that we like to be able to do is we want to give you the practical things we're talking about, but along with it, we're trying to give you some other things that are just sort of truths in the middle
Mm-hmm.
of it. So here's the big sort of truth for today is we want you to learn to recognize the difference between you're right
Mm-hmm.
and that's right. And there's a big difference between you're right and
Mm-hmm.
that's right. We've all had that argument, disagreement, usually with our spouse somewhere along the line where, I'm gonna make us the good guys here, right? Where we're
Oh,
we're
yeah.
disagreeing with our spouse and she just keeps going and finally like, no, you're right, honey. You're right, honey. You're right. And what that really means is please stop. You win.
Mm-hmm.
I give. Whatever you want. I give. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get something that's just universally true, you move from you're right to that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's that moment when you say something and people go, "Oh, yes, yes, yes. That's so right."
Mm-hmm.
And when you get that moment, that's when you really know you're finding something. And that's what we're going to start shooting for. And that's our end game in everything we're working at and what we're talking about today. So I want to give you, and it's going to sound big, I'm going to give you 5 steps. And this is admittedly like, this is the hard work. This is the challenge. This is the
Mm-hmm.
grueling. The last one should have taken you about a month. This one's going to be 3 to 6, maybe 7 months of
Yeah.
work to get to the place where we're going.
100%.
But it will be so worth it because you're going to get to these that's right
Right.
scenarios.
Yeah.
So that's what we're working on today.
It's a big deal. I mean, the difference between you're right and that's right is the difference between you driving a car and forcing everyone to go with you than you giving the car keys to someone else, knowing and trusting they're going to take you where we all want to go. I mean,
Yeah.
it is foundational. That's or you're right is okay. You win. I give up. I'll just do what you want me to do. Well, that's toxic to your culture. Your staff, you don't want them to say you're right all the time. How you know that they're all on board and they have got a shoulder into the football dummies pushing the sled down the field with you is when they go, you know what? That's right. That's what we're doing.
Right.
That's
and the more
right.
that you can get that is when you're sitting there watching, one of the little cues for you is to pick up to go, wait a minute. When the more you say, ooh, yes, that's
Mhm.
right, to the things your staff are saying, that means the more aligned you guys are. If when
Mhm.
your staff's talking, you're going, then you're probably not there yet. So our goal is going to get to these that's right statements. Now, what we're
Mhm.
looking for is between 4 to 6 different words. We're looking for a list of 4 to 6 words that really sort of sum up the truth behind what we value.
Mhm.
That's what we're dealing with, cultural value,
Mhm.
because the value is the systemic foundation for everything else we're talking about. So, if that's the goal, here's what we do. We started last time with this framework of 10 to 15 of these words, and we're going to continue to do the keep, kill, combine game, right?
Mhm.
That's what we're going to do. Keep, kill, combine this list, and we're going to sort of cut it more and more and more. What we're looking for, though, when you bring this list in, is set it in front of your people, and you want to begin to ask sort of these questions of, hey, where are we at with this?
Mhm.
Just say, what do you think of this one? And the moment people go, ooh, yes, right, put a check mark. You got a winner there.
Yep.
The more they're going, we don't know. So first thing you want to do is read off your list of 10 to 15 and just get the responses from people. Hey, what do you think of this one? What do you think of this one? And what you're going to do with that is you're going to find very quickly some that are very clear,
Mhm.
some that are very unclear, and some that are what I would call aspirational.
Right.
Like we wish that's who we were, but
Mhm.
if the group doesn't say, yep, that's right. Now, sometimes you may explain what you were going for and they'll go, ooh, no, that's right.
Mhm.
Because they just hadn't thought about it that way. One
Right.
of ours that we're still working through right now is, and I'm telling you that because we try to redo this lately it's been about every 5 years. We kind of look at this again, and just to see if we're still there.
Mhm.
And so one of the words that we've kind of moved to using more and more is restoration.
Right.
But and people are pretty much on board with the word, but we're having a bit of a difference of opinion as to what the word means.
Right.
Like how do we define it? And I'll get to that
That's
in a moment,
right.
but that's so key that they think it means one thing and I'm saying it means something else. And I've tried, so when I've explained, oh, I meant it like this, like, oh, that's right. But what about? Okay, so we still have a lack of clarity there, and that's okay. We'll keep working up from there. So first thing you do, you're going to put it in front of people, discover the ones that are clear, that are unclear, and that are more aspirational in nature.
So
Now,
step one, keep, kill, combine. Like we got
yes,
that right. Step
right.
one, keep, kill, combine. But Brian, if we've now had the 15 to 20 post-it notes on the board, and we've now put 3 or 4 here, we've circled that as a, we have to take that, and we still have to go to find more clarity from that. So step two
Yes.
should be redefining those clarity and confusion points now that we've done our keep, kill, combine process, right?
Yeah. So the best way to do this is, and I think this is my opinion. My opinion is, if you've got somebody on your team who seems to kind of like writing, they like the wordsmithing. I know a lot of times, especially if you're the leader or if you're the minister, you think like words are your thing. But if you got somebody who's a good writer, who seems very articulate, a good editor, right? Give them the words and ask them to just write a few sentences, write a paragraph, at the most a paragraph, but usually 1, 2, or 3 sentences that describes this word. You're writing your own definition for it, because every community and every culture has their own definition of a word. And so knowing what you mean by that is really, really key. And so this is one of those things you can do. You pass off to someone else, let them write these short descriptions, and then bring them back. It might take them a month. It's okay. But that's the second step. Write a short 1, 2, or 3 sentence description. You're going to write a paragraph is what you're going to do. And that will help everyone understand that we're all saying the same thing.
Right. We were talking about earlier, before we hit the record button, is that the idea behind this is that you want it to take some time.
Yes.
This needs to take months on end. It's okay if you hit 7-8 months on this. Ideally, don't drag it on for a year, because it just starts to get old and you've forgotten about it at that point. It's not a priority. But this needs to take time. If you hit 6, 7, or 8 months, that's okay, because you need that time for this stuff to crock pot or to simmer, right?
Right.
So the chili is one of the only foods that we as a family will make today and eat tomorrow, or better yet, eat in 2 days, because it needs that time to mix all together, the flavors to really come out. This is the same process. So if you're sitting here, Pastor, you're sitting here and you're listening and you're going, man, we got problems today. We got to fix these today. I understand that. But the problems you have today are only fixed if you take the time to let this run its course and do the process. Right. Because these problems, your culture problems, aren't going to be fixed today. They're not going to be fixed tomorrow. They're not going to be fixed in 2 months. They're going to be fixed on down the road when this starts to really take hold and you start to see the fruit. So settle in, hang out, hang on. It's going to be okay. You need to let this sit. And giving it off to someone to have them create these paragraphs or these statements only allows them to have that information for more time, so then they get to personify it and embody it and start to live it out. So then you have more times to look at someone and go, hey, that's right.
Yeah. You're creating real investment and buy-in along the way, and you're making sure it's right. I mean, there have been a lot of times in the past where I've put stuff together, sometimes in as little as a month on some of these.
Just because you got to get it done.
Right. First time I actually did this. So I'm speaking to someone who's done this multiple times now. The first time I did this, I just did it myself.
Right.
And came back and said, boom, there we go. And I still kind of put it in front of people. We got a little pushback on 1 or 2. We made a couple of adjustments. But at the end of the day, I did it myself. We said we got it done in a month, and it worked, but it wasn't internalized. And so we had to keep tweaking and adjusting and tweaking and adjusting. Like I said, we've done this now as a church and as a staff multiple times now. And that's kind of why I know that this process is longer, but better. It's the same, but maybe it's the same process to why I like smoking meats and briskets and all these things. I know it's going to take longer, but what it will do is it'll break down the tougher tissues and the tougher parts of the meat, so it becomes amazing. But you've got to be willing to be patient. One of the things I tell people when I'm going to do a barbecue is the meat is done when the meat is done. It doesn't care what time you got here. And so this is very similar type scenario. So if you've got your list, you've cut it down, you now have a shorter list. You have now given that list to someone else to give some descriptions. So the next step is you're going to bring them all in. The third step, you're going to bring it all in, and you're going to just discuss these definitions
Mm-hmm.
as a group, um, with the goal of getting to a sentence fragment.
Right.
That's what you want to be able to drive yourself down to, is a sentence fragment, ideally 3 to maybe 6 words,
Mm-hmm.
something that you could repeat pretty quickly. You're going to find, this is where you're going to really get those that's right moments. You're going to find you're really doing a good job if you find that 2 or 3 of these just roll themselves out with no problem. Somebody put
Right.
together this big phrase, you cut it to a small one, everybody's like, man, that's exactly it. Yeah, well, that's so right. You're still going to end up with 1 or 2 where people are like, not quite yet. Cool. Don't revise everything, right? You're playing Yahtzee is what you're doing. If you ever played Yahtzee,
Yeah.
right? You have the 5 die, you
only
roll
need to put
them,
2
you're
back
like,
in
I'm
there.
going to keep these 3.
Yep.
We're just going to deal with these 2. And so that's what you're doing. Every time you get the that's right, that one's off the table now. And you're going to really be able to focus in. And you may get through the first part of this. You may go from your 10 to 15 to your maybe 6-ish down to your descriptions and the sentence fragment definitions. You may be able to do that in as little as 2 or 3 months to really give the fair time. But those last few, this is what's going to take some serious time, because you really have to know where you're at. And that brings us to step number 5, which is where we're going to have to park for a moment. You have to test them.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the first time you're going to pick these things up and you're going to carry them out of the room, and you're going to set them in front of some people that you really trust, people that are good communicators. But don't bring this to people outside of your church. These are people who are in the leadership of your church, in the core of your church. They know the heart of your church or the heart of your staff. And from there, you just kind of set these in front of them and tell them what you're doing, right? And say, hey, these are, here are the 2 that we just can't find the right word for. We're kind of mean this, and we kind of mean this, and we kind of mean this. One of the recent ones that we dealt with, just showing how practically this works, is we talk about valuing restoration and hope. But when we talk about hope, we mean it in the context of that God is going to set everything right. Well, if God is going to set everything right, that is also restoration.
Right.
So what's the difference between the 2? And it took a lot of just massaging these words and working through them, but we had to present it in front of a few other people, just some good, smart minds. Now that you've moved out of the room you were in, into the minds of some of your other leaders, again, you're creating this buy-in. You're letting it percolate. You're seeing how well it sells. Like, can you really present it? And I know that, right there, I know some people went, oh, he's selling something. Forgive my terminology.
Preacher, you're selling scripture every time you stand on stage. You're selling the fact that you know the scriptures and that we should follow Jesus and give our lives to him. Don't get me on the soapbox of selling. We do it every Sunday.
Right. I'm trying to, but the reality is, right, if Paul is trying to compel us to become all things to all people, that means we're constantly sort of tweaking and adjusting without giving up truth. And that's kind of what you're doing here as you're presenting these ideas. Like, hey, does this sound like us? Right. So one of them that we've been working on is we put one out like, this is absolutely true. And some people said it's only been true in the last 2 years.
Right.
Okay. Does that make it not true? They went, no, it's true. Do we want that to be who we are in the next 5 years? Yes. Cool. Then it stays. And there's some other ones that we had in there that we went, we used to do that.
True. Yeah.
But we don't do that anymore. Well, do we want that to be who we are? Actually, no, not really. Cool. Then we're always playing that keep, kill, combine game, admittedly. But that's where that one comes in, is you just test it in a few people. And again, you're looking for, that's right.
That's right. So this plays out well. I was able to go out and coach a church, and they were trying to figure out, what does this look like for us? How do we do this when it comes to missions? What does it look like for us to apply all of this for the missions culture of our church, making a local and global impact? And they've just wrapped up everything, and they've got their They got their big statement, their sentence statement, then they got their sentence fragment, and then they've also got their 2 words that will be the thing that they push back to every time. And the 2 words are ignite beyond. Ignite beyond. And they want their people to know that when they see ignite beyond, they don't just hear ignite beyond. They know what ignite and they know what beyond means because they've taken the time to let this percolate, taken the time to invite people into the process to speak into it. So when they see ignite beyond, they know it's a catalyst. We have to go do something, and it's external. It's not internal focused on us. It's something that we're sent out to do. And so they've been able to take it all the way down to be able to put it on a business card, a t-shirt, or a napkin size phrase that says ignite beyond. That's what we're doing. And that's what takes the process. And it's, by the way, it's taken them about 7 months to do that.
Yeah. And what's interesting is if you ask them what ignite beyond means, they can blow that into a whole series of things. But to anybody else, oh, ignite beyond, that's a nice phrase. Right. But culturally, that phrase is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you ask people outside of our church, when we talk about a place for every one,
Mm-hmm.
and we separate the word every and one, you ask someone outside of our church, like, okay, that's a maybe a neat slogan, I guess.
Right.
But you ask people inside our church, that phrase all of a sudden actually carries with it 4 more steps.
A lot of weight.
Because that's how we have used that, because it's constantly expanding and expanding and expanding. It's a lot like a web page where you got a link and you click on the link and there's more to it. You click on a link and there's more to it. So this leads us to the last component of this part of it, right? All we're trying to do is get to this. The final step is that little bitty tiny detail work where you can put these 4 to 6 words and these little sentence fragment definitions out, and the entire room goes, that's right. This is the part that's going to take a long time.
Mm-hmm.
The last time we went through this, the way we did this is we had a team of people were working on it. Then they cut it down to these shorter definitions. They cut it to 1 sentence definitions. I cut it to sentence fragment definitions. Then I set it back in front of them. They had a couple of them. Absolutely. That's a win. That's a win. That's a win. These 2 we're not so sure about. One of their people cut it again. I edited it again. And we just went back and forth. But here's the thing I want to say about that. We didn't go back and forth against each other.
Right.
We went back and forth for each other.
Right.
Ooh, I think you were trying to say this, or were you trying to say this? What's the word that bugged you here? What was this one? And so we're helping and pushing back with each other in these different settings. I've just found, this is my world. Now your world may be different. I find to do that in a meeting is exhausting, and other people feel like they wasted their time.
Right.
So I prefer, in our world, we use this. We've talked in our tech stack about Basecamp that one of them will write something, and then I'll write an addition to it and create a different version, and then 2 or 3 people will push back. Well, what about? And the moment that we see, even in Basecamp, someone go, "Ooh, yes, cool, we got a that's right moment."
Right.
And so the goal is that you're just going to really take that time to core this thing down, and what you will end up with is 4 to 6 that's right statements. And what you have now is the stem for everything you will do in your culture. You will have a consistent, unified language that can drive you back to the core things that you're about.
Right.
And the goal is to get to these that's right statements. It's exhausting.
It is exhausting, but it's impactful. It's needed, and it's going to take time. That's why we want you to know up front, this is not a project you're going to get done by the end of the year. Right.
No.
So we're recording this.
No.
This is now Q4. We're about to get into holiday season. If you start something like this thinking that you're going to roll out January, vision, right? So in 2021, everybody had 2020 vision sermon series, right? Didn't see this coming. But this is not one you're going to come out and have a, January 2022 vision, series in January. You're not going to get it done by then. It's not going to be sustainable. Fall of next year, going into fall, relaunch of discipleship after summer, student ministry's kicking off again, adult discipleship is kicking off again. Great. Perfect time. But start now to get ready for then, because it's going to take that amount of time to really hone in, to do the inventory of who we are now, the actual, and who we want to be, the aspirational, so that we don't want to just put it into place and call it a system, right? We talked about that last week.
Right,
that it wants to be systemic. It's the stem. It's the internal. It is intrinsic to who we are. That's why we live these things out.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, Brian, once you figure out who you are as a church and go the deep dive inside, this cultural stuff comes from that. It only allows you to even live a more authentic life and a more authentic version of what God's called your church to be. That's why we take
let's
the
go
time
back
to do
what we
this.
talked about 2 times ago. You'll be magnetic, meaning you're going to attract and repel. Both are good. So let me give you the one real practical thing. If you're looking for a practical, actionable, go do this right now step. Here you go. As you're working on your goals for 2022, one of your goals may be to have a defined, condensed list of 4 to 6 cultural value terms and definitions presented in front of the congregation, which is what we're going to talk about next time. But the reason I would tell you that now is because what you may want to start doing immediately is put into next year's budget a line item for how we're going to roll this in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of things we're going to print, we're going to make, we're going to show, we're going to present,
celebrate,
right? And next week, next time, we're going to talk to you specifically about just a whole bunch of practical ways to do that. But if you start now saying, I'm going to make this a goal for the year and we're going to budget accordingly, the only thing I want you to know as you get into it is remember, it's going to be time consuming. Don't get frustrated by it, because every time there's pushback, every time there's disagreement, that actually means you're one step closer to that's right.
Right.
And that's beautiful when you remember it. Don't get frustrated about the pace. Don't get bogged down. Just remember to keep on it, because at the end of the day, if you don't get that's right, then you're going to get your right, and people will subtly begin to push against it, and you actually create turmoil unintentionally because you weren't patient, long suffering in your patience as you wait to get to that's right. So that would be my recommendation, is make that a goal for next year and give it a budget to see it come to fruition.
Brian, can you imagine the amount of the elation these pastors are going to get when they get their first that's right? I mean, I'm just excited for you. Like I'm excited. We want to know when you get your first that's right. When you see this, drop a comment below. Let us hear from you the that's right statements. Tell us where you were, what you were doing. I guarantee it's going to sear in your mind. Well, I was sitting in this meeting and the so-and-so staff member that I've kind of had some trouble with rattled this off, and you're going, oh, that's right. I got a that's right moment. It's so exciting. We want to celebrate with you. Drop us a comment below and let us know when you've had your that's right moments. But then stick around for next week. We really want to finish up this process and walk you through what do you do next. Now you've spent all this time and you've got this. How do you get to the statements like Brian's been saying that we've got this a place for everyone. Now that you've got that, what do you do to make sure everyone knows it? And we want to give you that next week. So thank you for tuning in to the Seats to Streets YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Oh, backwards, it's going to pop up this way. To the channel. Let us know your that's right moment below in the comments. Forward this off to a pastor friend of yours or someone else in ministry to say, hey, you've got to see this series. We'd love to be able to help. If you want more content from Seats to Streets, check us out online, seatstostreets.com. But for that, we will see you next week.
Later.